Today's story is titled A Star is Made of Many Parts by K.V. Harrow. The link to the story is in the description below. Please enjoy. He had always known he was meant for the stage, not for the trains or the dark brick tunnels beneath the Stamford Theater District, where sewage carried cigarette butts and discarded ticket stubs. He was not meant for the stink of rot or for the black water that rose around his feet whenever it rained. Above him, the city lived differently. Every night at 9 sharp, he watched the big metal boxes arrive above the curb, each one carrying creatures of impossible beauty. A door opened. One slender limb touched the pavement, followed by a second identical one. Then a figure stepped out and took the arm of its companion. Together, they crossed the pavement towards the great theater. He envied their freedom, and the way their presence lifted the dark streets into something bright with perfume, laughter, polished shoes, and applause leaking through open doors. For a while, watching was enough, but eventually, curiosity got the better of him. He waited until the street above went quiet, then pressed his fingers through the hole in the heavy iron cover and pushed until it shifted. It had been difficult at first. The cover was round and stubborn, and the street held it tightly. He had learned where to place his fingers, learned how to push, how to twist, how to make room for himself. Inside, he found his way into a narrow metal passage above the theater balcony, a place where he could observe the creatures below without disturbing them. From there, he watched the plays with reverence. He studied the actors' gestures, the way they turned their faces towards the light, the way they lifted their hands when sorrow overtook them. Most of all, he listened to the sounds they made. How wonderful they were. Yes, he was meant for the stage. All he had to do was find a proper costume first. It was a cold November night, but Alice Bellamy didn't mind. After the heat of the stage lights, the cold air felt good. She had sung well. She could tell from the applause, from the men who had risen before the final note had faded, and from the women who joined them a second later. A few blocks was nothing. Alice had walked home later than this before, her coat open despite the cold, her green dress bright beneath the streetlights. Her red hair, curled for the performance, had begun to loosen in the damp air. She touched it once and smiled. Let them look, she thought. That night, she had earned it. Alice couldn't wait to get home, take off her heels, and sink into the couch with a cigarette and a glass of Bordeaux. She might even give that young man from last week a call. Star or not, a woman still had needs. Behind her, something clicked beneath a drain cover. Alice kept walking. The city was full of noises at night, especially after rain. Rats, she thought. There were always rats after rain. She adjusted her coat and stepped around a puddle, watching her dress flash green beneath the wool. In a few minutes, she would be home. Then something behind her breathed in. A slow breath, drawn through the mouth like someone preparing to sing. Alice turned, expecting a fan lingering after the show, or maybe one of those chorus girls hurrying to catch up with her. The street was empty. She kept still for a moment, listening. Alice had dealt with unwanted attention before. Men who followed her usually wanted to be noticed. They wanted the little gasp, the glance over the shoulder, the proof that they had disturbed her privacy. This felt different. Whoever was behind her did not want to be seen. She began walking again, a little faster this time, careful not to look frightened. Every few steps, the urge to turn around came back. The city was still making the same noises as before, but now each one of them seemed to come from somewhere behind her. The scrape of metal nearby sent her running. She could not tell where it came from. She forgot about the couch, the cigarette, or the glass of wine waiting at home. One of her heels came loose as she ran through the theater district. Alice had spent weeks saving for those shoes, but they would be of no use to her if she was dead. A few steps later, the other one slipped from her foot as well and vanished behind her. She could hear something following her now. Not footsteps, but something lower, moving fast over the wet pavement. Her apartment door came into view at the end of the street. Just a few more seconds and she would be inside, safe. She would take a cab home from now on. No more late night walks, no more shortcuts, no more. Her bare foot struck the edge of a puddle. The street tilted. Alice Bellamy hit the pavement hard. The last thing she heard before the night took her was the crack of her skull. Arthur Doyle had seen his share of gruesome cases. After more than 20 years as a captain with the Stamford Police Department, there was little left that could pull him from behind his desk. His bad knee had made sure of that. So had his wife, who would never let him hear the end of it if she knew he was out on the streets again. But when word of the murder reached him, Doyle knew he had to see it for himself. He adjusted his shirt, which felt tighter than he liked. His doctor had warned him about his blood sugar, his weight, and all the other things men were supposed to start caring about after 60. But Arthur Doyle had never been good at changing old habits. He clipped his badge onto his belt, drew in his stomach, and opened the door of his cruiser. The air felt particularly cold that night. It would not be long before the first snow fell. He lifted the police tape and ducked beneath it with a grunt. Damn it! The doctor was right. Doyle knew the case was bad before anyone said a word. At most scenes, there was room for an occasional joke or a bit of small talk. Not here. The officers around the tape stood in silence, their faces fixed on anything but the body waiting behind them. How bad is it? Doyle heard the uncertainty in his own voice, but the medical examiner did not seem to pay attention to him. Bad, he said. Young woman, early 20s maybe, dressed for the stage. A young woman? Doyle hated cases like these. Cause of death? Preliminary? Blunt force trauma to the head. The other injuries came after. Doyle felt the cold settle a little deeper into his joints. What other injuries? The medical examiner looked past him, toward the sheet. You should see for yourself, sir. At first, Doyle struggled to understand what he was looking at. The young woman had been beautiful once, but none of that beauty remained. She had been ruined so completely that Arthur was grateful most of her injuries had been inflicted after death. Poor thing. Most of the woman's skin was missing. The cuts across her body suggested whoever had done it had been in a hurry. Sloppy work, Doyle thought. Sloppy or not, how had someone found the time to do this in an alley? Skinning a body took time. Skill, too, even if the results were crude. Doyle did not like the thought of someone capable of that wandering the theater district at night. Her throat had been cut open, too. The cuts there looked different, less hurried. He didn't understand why. Doyle stared at the wound beneath her jaw and felt, for the first time in years, that he was looking at something he did not understand. The man had beautiful legs. They were long and straight beneath the dark fabric of his trousers, made for balance, for turning, for crossing the stage beneath a wash of golden light. His hands looked strong as well. He could not wait to try them out. He had not used his new voice yet. His costume was not finished. He would save it for the audience. The man lay motionless on the floor. He had learned from the woman. A blow to the head had quieted this one just the same. He had not meant for it to happen the first time. He had not wanted to hurt her. He only wanted to use some of her parts. He wrapped his hands gently around the man's leg. The skin was soft beneath his fingers, tender in a way his own had never been. His hands looked wrong in comparison, dry and cracked at the surface. the nails dark from the tunnels below. The bone broke with a loud snap. The sound startled him. For a moment, he stopped and looked at the man's face, waiting for him to wake. But the man only breathed through his open mouth, while blood spread beneath him in a dark, widening pool. The leg did not come away as easily as he had hoped. It clung stubbornly to the rest of the body. He twisted carefully at first, then harder, until something deep inside gave way. He pushed his fingers into the wound and pulled at what still held the leg in place. It took longer than he expected. The body did not want to let go. His costume was almost complete. Just a few more pieces. Slowly but surely, he had become beautiful. He had to arrange the skin multiple times before it fit, but the limbs held firm, and he had been practicing for 5 nights. At first, walking had been difficult. The legs did not want to work together. One dragged behind the other, and the knees bent too late. But he kept walking the sewers until he could cross the tunnels without falling. Soon he could turn, then jump, then dance, or something close to it. The voice, his voice, was all he could think about. It sounded just like the people he had watched for so many nights, and with a little more practice, it would sound even better. Even in the reflection of the dark sewage, he could see it. The shape of himself, the costume, the miracle of all those borrowed parts. He was finally one of them. He was finally ready for the stage. The Stamford Theater was packed that night. People from all over the city had bought tickets weeks in advance. This was not a performance anyone wanted to miss. The stage had been decorated with elaborate flowers, carefully arranged to resemble a meadow at sunrise. Elodie Marchand, the famous singer from Paris, would perform that evening, and half the city had come to hear what critics called the most angelic voice in Europe. Behind the curtain, he could hear the audience murmuring in the dark. They sounded excited, impatient even. He had never seen so many people inside the theater before. All he had to do was wait for the curtain, and the show could begin. The murmurs ceased as soon as the spotlight dimmed, leaving only the false meadow illuminated. The curtain began to rise. He could hardly believe it. His dream was coming true. The fabric rose. He stepped into the light and let them admire him, as they had admired so many others before. Hundreds of faces turned towards him, hundreds of eyes looking into the miracle of his costume. Silence. For a moment, he thought they were starstruck. They had to be. They were stunned by him, by what he had made of himself. Any second now, the applause would come. Then one of the spectators made a loud, unpleasant sound. It hurt his ears. Others began making the same sound, their face twisted into shapes he did not recognize. People rose from their seats and pushed towards the exits. Some stumbled between the rows. Others climbed over seats, trampling each other in the attempt to get away. No. They didn't understand yet. He knew what to do. He knew how to make them love him. He had to sing. The doors to the Stamford Theater street swung open, and a shrill, piercing sound struck Captain Arthur Doyle at once. He winced as it tore through the theater. It was coming from the stage. Doyle raised his service pistol towards the figure beneath the lights, but nearly lowered it again when his eyes made sense of what he was seeing. The thing on the stage had tried to make itself look human. It had failed. Rotten skin stretched across its body in the wrong places, pulled too tight in some and hanging loose in others. What looked like the face of a young woman had been laid over its own like a mask, expressionless, except for the wet movements beneath it. It stood on human legs, though not evenly. One dragged behind the other, The arms were mismatched too, one longer than the other, the hands hanging at different heights. It seemed to believe it was graceful. It jerked and leapt across the stage in a grotesque imitation of dance, trying again and again to find its balance. The longer Doyle watched, the more frantic the movements became, until strips of skin tore loose and dropped to the floor with wet splats. Doyle raised his pistol fully.
"Stop! Put your hands up!"
At the sound of his voice, the creature turned towards him. For one terrible moment, Doyle thought he saw something almost human in its eyes. Desperation. Then it lurched forward. Doyle fired 3 times. All 3 shots hit. He dropped to his knees. Pain washed through him, and something dark spilled from his body. His last admirer came toward him. The world blurred at the edges. Soon it would go black. He knew that now. Every performance had to end. The man knelt in front of him. He tried to reach for Doyle's hand, but his borrowed fingers would not obey.
"What are you?"
the man asked. His mouth trembled beneath the slipping mask.
"Star."
He had always known he was meant for the stage, but now the lights went dark.